Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. In my last video I discussed how male genital mutilation, castration, and male pain is often seen as a joke, as opposed to a serious crime.
We're about to go there because this woman, allegedly did. According to the Orange County DA's office, Catherine Q. Becker is accused of cutting off her husband's penis with a knife, taking his penis and throwing it into the garbage disposal.
So, kind of like how Freud proposed that women feel the need to strive for power, etc. because they have penis envy. Well, I feel the need to metaphorically castrate every living man on earth. I actually hate every single man I have ever fucking met. They are actual filth. They were put on earth to provide women with semen to create more women. Males are disgusting. I actually cannot wait to metaphorically castrate every single one I ever meet.
Police say Becker attacked him because he filed for divorce. She's being held. She goes, that'll teach him. She is being...
Lorena Bobbitt should be in Congress. She would take of these T-fuckers.
I would have just thrown it in the dog's bowl.
Why does the dog have to suffer?
Chewing on an old bone.
Well, remember the Lorena Bobbitt, the Bobbitt case where
Love her.
she kind of did that
Love
first.
her. I like candles by her picture.
Yeah. Oh, you love Bobbitt?
Some boys should really be castrated.
So why is this behavior not condemned by our society? I suspect there are many complex reasons. I intend to focus on one of those reasons in this video. The way male and female sexuality is seen by society is very different. Female sexuality is seen as natural, nurturing, caring, and even spiritual.
In the Den with Dr. Jen, an open-minded and fun place for females to explore sexuality in a comprehensive manner and start thinking about female sexuality outside the box. Now, in earlier sessions of the Den, I recommended books by sex therapist and author Gina Ogden, including Women Who Love Sex, Ordinary Women Describe Their Paths to Pleasure, Intimacy, and Ecstasy, and The Heart and Soul of Sex, Making the ISIS Connection. Gina's work has been a huge contribution to the field of sexuality, and we're going to be talking to her today.
Here comes the first principle of female sexuality. In the Tibetan Tantric tradition, the feminine principle is called wisdom. Wisdom is a state of being. It's a state of being. It's not about doing. The masculine principle is skillful action. Right. The wisdom principle holds the bigger picture. The feminine she feels everything on all sides. I don't know if you've noticed that when you make love. We feel everything. Mm-hmm. The men can just be focused here, that's enough for them. But we feel everything, we hear every sound.
Let me be clear here, I am in no way condemning females exploring their sexuality. In fact, I think it is a good thing. But let's compare it to how we see male sexuality.
Well, now there are millions of parents and grandparents in this country who may be reluctant to show their children affection in public for fear they'll be labelled a dirty old man. Some of these innocent men have been questioned, even detained by police while going about their parental duties. As James Thomas reports, it highlights a growing trend where all men are considered potential predators.
A lady takes photos by the kids' pool. No one bats an eyelid. She's harmless. But what happens when a man does the same thing?
We had a report that someone fitting your description was taking photos of kids up here.
It's this whole thing that men are guilty until they're proven innocent, and that's really wrong.
An airline passenger is asked to move from children on a plane. He's done nothing wrong, except he's a man.
And I said to her, isn't that discrimination?
On planes, in classrooms, by pools. Men are being typecast in a role no one wants to be known for.
Not every guy in society is a pedophile, and to be viewed that way is a massive injustice.
On a flight to Sydney, passenger John McGurr says that Virgin Airlines treated him like a sexual predator.
A stewardess came up and she said, I'm going to have to ask you to move. I said, why? And she goes, because you're not allowed to sit next to children because you're a male.
It's a bit sexist, isn't it?
It's just our policy to not have males sitting next to unaccompanied minors.
And she walked up the aisle trying to find a female to ask to swap with me. By that time, people had looked around and...
Yeah, how did it make you feel?
Like I'd done something wrong, defenceless as well.
On the face of it, the policy certainly does seem to be discriminatory. It's aimed particularly and only at men.
Barrister David Galbally.
I think the Sex Discrimination Commissioner should act on this immediately and shouldn't let it continue.
Virgin declined an on-camera interview. In a statement, they say their policy is based on customer feedback and is common to many airlines. However, in light of the John McGurr complaint, Virgin are in the process of finalising a new policy, pending the outcome of a formal risk assessment.
One solution basically is to keep the seat free. So males or females can't sit there, but the reason that Virgin don't do that is because it's a seat they can't sell.
I don't think that we should be telling women anything. I think we should be telling men not to rape women and start the conversation there.
Well, criminals
with
are not going to listen to that.
No,
so
but
I agree with you.
We're not. I mean, yes, men are committing a crime, but many of the men that commit rape are people that you know. But
no man should do that to anybody.
You're talking about it as if there's some faceless, nameless criminal, when a lot of times it's someone that you know and trust.
Well, I'm saying that women need to know that these situations arise, and we've got to... Evil exists in the world.
Yes, but
evil
exists. We can prevent rape by telling men not to commit it.
Criminals will not listen.
No.
The suspicion that because I'm a male, I'm actually their child is at some risk offends me.
Steve Badger runs one of the country's most successful swim schools. He fears that political correctness is scaring men out of his industry.
One of the kids that I had encouraged to become a swimming teacher said to me this morning that he's actually given up on becoming a swimming teacher because he didn't want an occupation where he felt like he was under constant scrutiny about the way that he was handling himself with children.
The governing authority, AustSwim, now trains teachers to ask permission every time a child in a class needs to be held or touched.
I've yet to be convinced that any of these measures have actually ended up in protecting one extra child.
Just on beat one.
And in the classroom, male teachers are becoming an endangered species.
There's nothing more important than educating the next generation, and we should have our brightest and best, both men and women, doing that work.
Norm Hart is the president of the Australian Primary Principals Association.
It is the fear of litigation, of being judged, of having people think that you have ulterior motives for the work that you do, that makes people, or particularly young men, say, well, that is not the profession for me, I'll think about doing something else instead.
The consequences of the idea that all men are predators is so damaging.
Dr. Karen Brooks is a professor of cultural studies. She believes that society risks alienating men on a wide scale.
Gender discrimination against men in our society does exist, and we see it in multiple forms.
Now, back to those actors we hired to take photos by the children's pool at the beach. The woman loitered for close to half an hour without any interruption. It was a different story with our male actor. First, a protest from a beachgoer. And then some polite questions.
So you wouldn't have any problem with me checking your shots out?
No, not at all.
Of course, there were no photos because it was all a stunt to make a point.
What a terrible thing to do to our young men, you know, to do to our brothers, our nephews, our husbands, our lovers, you know, dreadful. Let's stop it.
Adult male sexuality is seen as dangerous and harmful, something threatening to be feared. But the really disturbing thing is, it's not just adult males that are seen this way.
A 6-year-old boy is suspended from school in Canyon City for kissing a classmate on the cheek. His mom says it's a crush and the two children like each other.
But the school is calling it something else entirely, sexual harassment. KRDO News Channel 13, Bonnie Silkman spoke with the school district.
I just think it's wrong.
When 14-year-old Nick Martinez got in trouble for a public display of affection in school, his mom wanted to know why.
I wanted to know if he had touched her inappropriately. Did she report it? Did she say anything about it? It was a mutual hug.
Nick says it was a quick hug in the hallway between he and his best female friend. The principal saw it and hauled him off to the dean for an in-school suspension. Even the principal says the hug was innocent.
I was livid.
A 9-year-old boy was suspended from school for sexual harassment, but he doesn't even know what that phrase means.
His mother told us her son got in trouble for telling a friend his teacher was cute. New this hour, Eyewitness News reporter Alan Cavana tried to get answers from the district.
Do you know what sexual harassment is?
No.
But 9-year-old Amanya Lockett learned the meaning of it.
Devontae Meadows, the first grader who was suspended for 3 days for alleged sexual harassment.
Good Lord.
I only just sang the song, he said. I'm sexy and I know it. The boy recited the lyric while he and a girl were standing in line for lunch, and that's why they're also now calling it sexual harassment.
If you think these examples are insane, just wait until you see this. The following comes from a 2008 Washington Post article. I will leave a link below. In 2006, a kindergartner in Hagerstown, Maryland, was accused of sexual harassment after pinching a female classmate's buttocks. A 4-year-old in Texas was given an in-school suspension after a teacher's aide accused him of sexual harassment for pressing his face into her breasts when he hugged her. It seems that all males are potential rapists, even 4-year-olds who have no idea what sex is. I have heard a number of these stories over the years. They seem to ever be on the increase. Yet I do not recall ever hearing of a female student suspended for sexual harassment. If anyone knows of any such case, please leave all appropriate links in the message section. But as far as I can tell, it is only boys, even 4-year-olds, who are being suspended for sexual harassment. If only boys are being suspended, then as far as I can see there are only 2 possibilities as to why. 1. It is a part of male nature to commit sex crimes, but not part of female nature. I think this can easily be debunked as a 4-year-old is not aware of what sex is. Or 2, there is a bias against boys. This would explain why a 6-year-old singing a song, or a 4-year-old hugging his teacher's aide, would be suspended for sexual harassment.
And so little boys, almost the day they enter school, exist in a kind of milieu of disapproval. And it's very sad because education has never been more important to a young person's prospects, and today girls are so much stronger educationally and boys are languishing.
If we live in a society that sees males as potential sexual deviants, pedophiles, or rapists, and females and children as their potential victims, what type of attitudes towards men is this likely to create?
Punishment of castration for rapists. Now, and why this punishment is not legal, because those who make the laws are men and potential rapists.
Right now, though, joining us from the US of A is a young woman who wants to ensure equality for women for once and for all. She's known as a feminist.
So are we meant to take your positions like literally? They're not just you kind of like putting out, you know, like provocative thoughts out there for us to kind of bounce around. Like, so if you say something like men should be castrated, we're meant to be taking that on exactly on that literal level.
Yeah, well, I don't think that men should be castrated. I don't actively advocate castration. I just think that it's a secondary solution. I mean, if all else fails, then I think that is something that we should go to.
And the reason for that, because like men are violent, is that right?
Yes, I mean, they make a lot more testosterone. That's where all their anger comes from. And I know women have testosterone too, but not in abundance like men do.
And has your experience been, in your 20 years, mainly about violent men or men who can't control their testosterone? Is that your experience?
No, I have met violent men. I've had violent men in my life, but most of the men in my life haven't been violent.
That there's been like big debates about rape in like certain countries where should like rapists that get caught, should they be castrated? And well, personally I think that they should, because I think that if you're evil enough to do that to someone, then you should never be able to you're never going to feel that pain, so you should be able to feel at least a tiny bit of the pain. You're never going to feel the emotional pain. But I think it's important that people realise how serious the crime is.
My children coming home and telling me, or my daughter or my son coming home and telling me that someone has raped or molested them, this would hurt a lot. In this case, I would say immediate castration. In this case, I would seek this person out on my own and castrate them myself. I think that being a grown-up, being an adult, you have a mind of your own to know what is right and what is wrong. And obviously, to rape a person who is saying no to you, a person who is trying to get away from you, obviously that's wrong, you know. And some of us may say you need to be more forgiving, and like I say, I've been very forgiving of my situation, and I did not report those two persons in. But when it comes to others, I'm very overprotective of others because of my situation. I'm very protective of women, of children.
I can understand someone who is the victim of rape, or the parents of a victim, wanting revenge on the person who committed the crime. I am not going to go into the morality or immorality of this here, but feel free to discuss it amongst yourselves in the comments section if you wish. But I can give you two very good reasons why the attitudes you have just seen are wrong. 1. It frames sex crimes as something that males do to women and children, and does not take into account that women can be sexual predators as well.
The arrest report says Vaughn continued to make sexual advances toward her, and when the victim refused, Linda Vaughn got angry and made the victim lick a wound on Vaughn's arm.
A Louisville woman is indicted on charges of rape, assault, unlawful imprisonment, and robbery. Police say Wisdom Duncan attacked a former co-worker that she thought had stolen from her. WLKY's Aaron Haynes is live at the Metro Corrections with more on this unusual case. Aaron?
Yeah, Rick, Wisdom Duncan, also known as Sunshine, was arrested about a week and a half ago after police say she accused another woman of stealing 2 TVs from her home, then beat and raped her.
Camp director of a sexual abuse of a 10-year-old boy. Melissa Stevens will be sentenced tomorrow for rape, sodomy, and 2 counts of sex abuse, all which happened about 5 to 6 years ago. Stevens founded the Willow Cottage Arts and Academics program. She's also worked as the administrative director of the Willowbrook Summer Arts program at Browns Ferry Park in Tualatin.
Teenager is charged with a disturbing sex crime in Johnson County. 18-year-old Ashley Geist of Olathe is accused of molesting a 3-year-old child.
Applause in the courtroom when a judge set a $1 million bond for a mother accused of sexually abusing her own baby.
You know, before we go any further, we need to take a minute and just warn you that this story is not one that you want your children to hear. But we do want you to know tonight that that child is safe and his mother is behind bars.
10 TV's A.J. Smith is live in our newsroom with the big story tonight. A.J.?
Well, Andrea and Kurt, you are right. This is a tough story, really, for anyone to hear. Ashley Jessup is charged with raping a child under the age of 13. In fact, police believe she raped her infant son.
Many people have been shocked at the fact that 2 women were at the centre of this horrific case of abuse. Our home editor, Mark Easton, explains the scale of sexual abuse of children by women. Good evening. A woman who was trusted to look after babies and toddlers at a nursery in Plymouth has admitted sexually abusing children in her care, taking images of her victims and sharing the pictures with 2 accomplices she met on the internet. Vanessa George, who worked at Little Ted's nursery in the city, appeared in court today where she pleaded guilty to a string of offences.
Yes, and standing on either side of her were Angela Allen and Colin Blanchard. They too admitted offences of assault and making and distributing indecent images. The 3, who lived hundreds of miles apart in Plymouth, Nottingham and Rochdale, texted thousands of obscene messages and sent more than 100 pictures to each other over many months. But they hadn't met until today, when they stood side by side in the dock. John Kay was in court and sent this report.
The smiling face of Vanessa George. This is how she was known to her family and to the families at the nursery where she worked. But behind their backs, she was sexually abusing young children and taking photos of that abuse. Vanessa George had been working with children for a decade. She had passed all the required checks. She was married with 2 teenage daughters. But secretly, she was a paedophile, sexually abusing babies and toddlers, taking photographs of that abuse on her mobile phone and sending the images to others. Some of the pictures categorised by police as being the worst level of child pornography.
Single mother Angela Allen contributed a series of explicit pictures showing her abusing a 3-year-old girl.
I just feel disgusted. I just can't believe that somebody has been on the doorstep, especially a woman, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's a man or a woman, but I think the general reaction, the fact that it's a woman, has made it worse.
Many people have been shocked at the fact that 2 women were at the centre of this horrific case of abuse. Our home editor Mark Easton explains the scale of sexual abuse of children by women.
The facts of this case challenge our understanding of human nature, not just the idea that people could find pleasure in the sexual abuse of very young children, but the revelation that women were involved. However, experts claim this kind of behaviour is not as uncommon as many suppose. 1/4 of sexually abused children were the victim of a female, according to separate American and British studies. Although estimates vary, that would suggest 250,000 people in Britain today suffered sex abuse perpetrated by a woman. And yet such allegations are often disbelieved, and there are few prosecutions. In 2007, only 6 women in England and Wales were convicted of sex abuse crimes against children.
Women abuse children for the same reasons that men abuse children, for sexual gratification, for power. Quite frankly, it's something that they enjoy doing. I know that's hard for the rest of us to comprehend, but women are no different than men in that case.
A few weeks ago in Australia, a new TV campaign was launched warning of the risks of sex abuse from those entrusted with the care of children.
Then they went to the school we thought was a safe place, where a trusted person sexually assaulted Emma and Katie, silenced them with threats and changed their lives forever.
The charity involved has calculated that almost 1/3 of sex abuse by women takes place in an organisational setting, notably kindergartens and babysitting. The majority of such abusers are not coerced by a man, but initiate the abuse themselves. The damage can last a lifetime.
But we begin with Jay Warren live in the newsroom with details on a Claremont County woman accused of raping a boy at knife point. Jay?
Well, Carol, police say 20-year-old Jamie Nicole Phillips took a kitchen knife and put it to the throat of her 14-year-old neighbor. Police say she forced him into her apartment and then forced him to perform sex acts.
Joe, there's not a lot of hard data about this, but there are anecdotes. Courts tend to be more sympathetic towards women offenders. Their sexual crimes are rarely violent and most often statutory with older teenage victims. One mother tells us that should not matter.
Our boy is a hero for going through the court system.
We first talked to this Ozarks mother a year and a half ago when this woman, Amanda Jackson, faced 3 counts of felony statutory rape in 2 Ozarks counties for having sex with a 14-year-old. Jackson set for sentencing on 2 of the counts at the end of the month.
I feel like a man gets put in jail right away, and she should have been put in jail right away.
Instead, she posted a $10,000 bond twice and moved just 5 miles from the family. And she'll stay there if she gets probation, as her attorneys have requested.
It's been really hard. I would not wish this upon an enemy.
Mom may be right to be concerned. A 10-year-long study of the U.S. Department of Justice shows female sex offenders tend to get lighter sentences.
Although the same percentage of offenders for both sexes tend to do jail time, women tend to do less.
Men's sentences are 6 to 31% longer than women's for the same or similar crime.
I think there are still stereotypes that women don't pose as much of a threat.
Maybe that's why then 23-year-old teacher Allison Peck got 5 years probation for having sex with a student in 3 different Ozarks counties. Only after probation violations and failing to register as a sex offender twice was she sentenced to prison time. Laura Kirkland, charged with raping and sodomizing a 10-year-old boy for 2 years, got 7 years. Greene County prosecutor Dan Patterson says the offender's gender is moot when he seeks a sentence. Yet,
there's a misperception that males are not as traumatized by either the sexual acts that are performed or by the psychological effect.
I often hear feminists claim that we live in a rape culture, And it is correct that we do live in a rape culture, just not the one they claim. Rape culture is not a comedian in a private club telling rape jokes. It is a culture of denial that excuses female sexual predators and ignores their victims. At the same time, it demonizes the sexuality of all men. But there is another reason why the belief that rapists and pedophiles should be castrated is wrong. 2. Sometimes the legal system gets it wrong.
It's a cliché of courtroom dramas. That moment when the eyewitness is asked, "Do you see the person who committed the crime here in this courtroom before you?" Well, it happens in real courtrooms all the time. And to jurors, that point of the finger by a confident witness is about as damning as evidence can get. But there is one type of evidence that's even more persuasive, and that, of course, is DNA. There have been 233 people exonerated by DNA in this country, and now a stunning pattern has emerged. More than 3/4 of them were sent to prison, at least in part, because an eyewitness pointed a finger, an eyewitness who we now know was wrong. 85% of these innocent men were convicted in part because an eyewitness fingered the wrong person. At the heart of the problem is the fragility of memory. As one researcher told us, we now know that memory is not like a videotape recorder. You don't just record an event and play it back. Instead, memory is malleable, full of holes, easily contaminated and susceptible to suggestion, as in the case of Jennifer Thompson and Ronald Cotton.
Before this case, did you think that there were a lot of innocent people put away?
No.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. Innocent people aren't convicted of crimes they didn't commit. I believed that.
What do you think now?
Oh, I know better. I mean, well over 200 cases nationally. We've had a half dozen in this state alone. The first, of course, was my case.
And as these innocent men have been freed in one state after the next, we've learned something else, that in all the cases where eyewitnesses were wrong, the real perpetrator was not in the initial lineup.
When you're sitting in front of a photo lineup, you just assume one of these guys is the suspect. It's my job to find it.
And Jennifer did her job. She found the suspect's photo. Problem is, the suspect, Ronald Cotton, was not the rapist.
Bobby Poole's photograph was not in the photo lineup. Right. He was not in the physical lineup.
When the real perpetrator is not in the set, is none of them, witnesses have a very difficult time being able to recognize that.
Gary Wells, a professor of psychology at Iowa State University, has been studying eyewitness memory for 30 years. He says when the real guy isn't there, witnesses tend to pick the person who looks most like him.
I think that Ronald Cotton and Bobby Poole look very much alike. They have very similar lips, shape of their eyes, their eyebrows kind of go up in a look of surprise.
Yes. Without him in the lineup, Ronald Cotton was the one who was in jeopardy.
Wells says eyewitness testimony has two key properties. One, it's often unreliable, and two, it is highly persuasive to jurors.
I can see why it's so persuasive. Someone says, I was there. You'd believe that person.
You believe that person because they have no reason to lie.
Yeah.
The legal system is set up to kind of sort between liars and truth tellers, and it's actually pretty good at that. But when someone is genuinely mistaken, the legal system doesn't really know how to deal with that, and we're talking about a genuine error here.
He walked us through what went wrong, some of it counterintuitive. When Jennifer spent 5 minutes studying the photographs, she and Detective Galden thought she was being careful.
I didn't want to come across, I don't think, as somebody who was like, that's the one. I really wanted to be sure.
Wells says no good.
Recognition memory is actually quite rapid. So we find in our studies, for example, that if somebody's taking longer than 10, 15 seconds, it's quite likely that they're doing something other than just using a reliable recognition memory.
So you're saying if she really recognized the guy, it would have been almost instantaneous.
Quite quick, yes.
He says a better way would have been to show Jennifer lineup photos or people one at a time, so that she would compare each one directly to her memory rather than to one another. Wells showed me a study in which more than 300 subjects were shown deliberately shaky videotape of a simulated crime.
You look out a window and you see some suspicious behavior. What happens is we tell them later then, this person that you saw right there put a bomb down the air shaft there.
Then subjects are shown a lineup and asked to identify the bomber.
That would be so hard. And
Very
I
difficult.
just saw it.
And of course, you're particularly cautious right now. You know now, after we've talked, probably not to pick anyone.
No, actually, I actually know who it is, because if I had come upon that, I think it's this guy. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. And I'm already saying how hard it is.
It's none of them.
It's none
and
of
it's
them.
it's so, and you
Isn't
know
that
about
bizarre?
it. You know about this. We've talked about this. So this is the difficult. This is what makes it so difficult.
Look what you just did to me. Yeah. I'm mortified. I feel like Jennifer.
Wells says in real life, the mistake is often compounded by what happens next. Remember the seemingly innocent information Jennifer says she got from police after she picked Ronald Cotton out of the physical lineup?
That's the same person you picked out in the photo lineup. So in my mind, I thought, bingo, I did it right.
Wells studied what that reinforcement does. After half his subjects did what I did, picked an innocent person from this lineup, he told them nothing, then asked them questions about what they had seen. Very few felt highly confident about their choice.
Only about 4% are saying they had a great view, which is good because we gave them a lousy view. Only about 3% are saying they make out details of the face. That also is good because they really couldn't.
But he told a second group of subjects, after they made the same incorrect choices, good, you pick the suspect.
Now what happens is almost 45% of witnesses now report that they were positive or nearly positive. Notice that over 1/4 of them now say they had a great view. And
this is really what happened to Jennifer.
It is what happened with Jennifer.
What this seems to be saying is that a reinforcement alters memory.
It does.
Dramatically.
It does.
The legal system is far from perfect. Sometimes people get it wrong, and sometimes they lie. I am not suggesting that sexual predators, if convicted, should have it easy, but if we were to castrate them, and later they were found innocent, it would be too late to reverse the process. The damage would already be done. This would be a punishment exclusively for males, and as we have already seen, not only males are sexual predators.
There's something I want to point out, though, not to be like a total buzzkill, but it is a little bit like sexist. Like if somebody cut a woman's breast off, no one would be sitting laughing. Like it's not that right to sit around laughing about it if we think about it.
It's different, though.
It is different.
One's floppy and wide. One just sticks up like that. It's easy to do that.
Some are.
How could the women on stage, and those in the audience, laugh so heartlessly over an innocent man having his penis violently cut off? And remember, these are not radical man-hating feminists, but everyday women, at least those in the audience. But what could allow them to laugh and make fun of a man's pain without guilt? Could it be that males, and our sexuality, have been demonized to such a point that our pain is seen as a good thing? Think about it. I have often heard people state that rapists and pedophiles should have their cocks cut off, and by no means have I just heard women say this, I have heard it from men as well. I also constantly hear rape and pedophilia exclusively associated with males, even though these are not crimes exclusively committed by males. Could these women not care about the victim's pain and suffering because they subconsciously see all men as sexual predators? Could the victim represent the negative male stereotype they have come to believe? I cannot say for sure. But I think these are interesting questions.
See something really scary? How about a lesbian feminist haunted house? Let's check it out.
I'd like to direct your attention to
our lesbian feminist graveyard of feminist ideas that have passed on too soon. So one of my personal favorites, of course, is the lesbian suffragist day and paganism movement. I think it's gone too soon. We also have Women for Women, and we have, of course, the L word. So just a few lesbian feminist ideas that we wish were still here. We've got some mirrors. Does anybody here at this point feel like looking at their own vagina? What would that entail? Well, you'd have to pull your dress down, I suppose, and have a look at your vagina. In this bucket, it is filled with her menstrual blood. Her blood nourishes our imagination, you see. So up these stairs, you will be in the secret tunnel of two adult women in love. Be prepared to crawl on your hands and knees. And I warn you, you will get touched. This, of course, is our ball-busting room. Balls are symbolic of multiple interwoven oppressions that emerge under the rule of patriarchy. As you can see, we've been very busy smashing some balls. Yeah. I find that at this part of the tour, the male students get a little bit nervous in this room. I don't know